So, quick story. I was scrolling through LinkedIn a few weeks ago, not really looking for anything other than people like complaining. And I came across this really good article called the Vibe Sales Manifesto. So I clicked on it, started reading it, and thought, okay, this is different. And it wasn't the usual sales fluff. It had clarity, honesty, and a tone that really stood out. So I reached out to the author, and he's here with me today. So, Zachary King, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on, and thanks for reaching out as well. Always happy to chat to people about this space. It's one that I'm super excited about.
Happy to have you on the show. So, just for, as an introduction, a few words on you, your experience, what you do, what you're working on, and where you are located, which is even more interesting.
Shh. Yeah. So I'll go in reverse order. So I'm based in Noosa, Queensland, Australia, on the east coast. It's a surf village turned retirement home turned new base for operators. And fast becoming a tech hub outside of the regional centers. Been here a couple of years. I work as a fractional go-to-market and sales lead with early stage and high growth companies. I got into that after working in tech for a long time, about 20 years. My last salaried role, my last real role where I had a regular paycheck and things like that, was working for a late stage ad tech company called MediaMath out of Singapore, running the Asia business. And I've been doing fractional work for about 3 years, and also have, you can see that here, the fractional exec community, which is a global community of people who are interested in trying to figure out this whole fractional movement, which is relatively new down here in Australia.
Thank you so much. And let's go straight to the main topic. What's the Vibe Sales Manifesto? And how did you come up with the idea?
Yeah, so look, I've been pretty deep in the AI rabbit hole even before it exploded over the last couple of years. In ad tech, we used to call it machine learning, and the algorithm certainly wasn't open sourced. It was 25 guys in New York, and nobody was allowed to know what it was because it would be gamed by bad actors. And then I had a wildly unsuccessful startup, which was an AI healthcare startup called Mobius. So I've been playing around in this space for a long time. And then, when I was at that startup, I built for our first prototype using off-the-shelf no-code tools. And I went down the no-code rabbit hole pretty deeply, and I was blown away that a guy like me who's been in tech but is not technical in any way could build something that was almost a product. And as you're obviously aware, that is nothing compared to what is happening now. And have more recently gone down the vibe coding rabbit hole. So I've been playing around with Cursor, deep down in that one, trying to figure out what to do from there, what to play with, and just really getting my hands dirty. And then after vibe coding, there was some a concept called vibe marketing popped up. Which was super interesting, and coming from a Martech background and trying to figure out how to market myself as a solopreneur, a company of one. You're always looking for ways to scale and to do things efficiently, and that was just wild. It was using the same tools. It was leveraging AI. It was using the power of Cursor and things like N8N. Tools that some were no code and some had evolved from no code tools, so they were familiar. I was like, this is really amazing. I was like, okay, well, this is going to come for sales next. And I was like, okay, vibe sales. What does that look like? That's the next natural evolution. I think in go-to-market, there are pieces that had been kind of nibbled around the edges, research, and there's a few, I think they're very early stage AI SDRs or BDMs. So I think, vibe sales is the next one that's coming down the pipe. And I think it follows the same pattern. It's leveraging AI. It's giving the power to the frontline user without having to wait for marketing or engineering. It's giving people at the front line of sales to control their destiny and to build things and to do it in a way that makes sense.
Thank you for the answer. And I think that, as I said at the beginning, no fluff, straight to the point article. But this is why I'd like to cover with you a few sentences that really stood out. Let's start from the first one. because in your manifesto you write that CRM is where deals go to die and buyers don't live in your pipeline. So, first of all, let's start from the meaning of this sentence, and then I will go with the follow-up questions I have. What do you mean with this sentence, actually? Because it's a pretty solid statement, you know?
Yeah. If you ask any sales rep or sales operator, what do they hate the most? The number one answer is updating the CRM. Like nobody gets into it, right? It's a pain. It's outdated. It's forcing you to take something which is non-linear and messy and try and jam it into a stage-gated, really rigid structure. And so, the expression that CRM is where deals go to die is because you spend your time endlessly updating these things, and instead of actually working the deal and trying to help the client solve their problem, which is what B2B sales is all about, it just goes into this wasteland of a database, which you're constantly being nagged to update it, and you don't want to do it, and you forget about it, and it's inconsistent, and everybody's nibbling around the edge of we can make this more efficient. I think AI gives us a very, or at least a glimpse of a very alluring future where we can throw the CRM out. Like, just get rid of it. Don't have any structured data. The beauty of AI is it's very good with unstructured data. So, we're never again putting things into stages. We're never going to do that. We're just going to ask the AI, is this ready to go? Is this ready to roll? And so, in terms of how does Vibe Sales capture buyer intent? I think it can do it far better than we can, and it can do it reading signals from every different channel, not just where you've placed it in the CRM according to the little diagram that RevOps did on the board 6 months ago when we did training. So I think we're right on the cusp of an exciting future, my friend.
Thank you. And the question is, CRM have been sold for 3,000 different ways. They have been sold in 3,000 different ways. Every year you add a new promise, looking like sometimes the network marketing wave. And, but my question for you is, at least they provided some structure. Okay. Now let's go back to the intent. Vibe sales captures the intent, but how do you keep consistent, at least with the structure that CRM gave? Because at least at the end of the day, they became a good, let's say, controlling tool from the managers, for the managers.
Totally, and I think you've hit right there on the important point, is that CRMs don't exist to make sales more effective. CRMs exist so that you can manage your data, and so that managers and management can understand what's happening and get a snapshot view of where the company is so that you can react. Now, don't get me wrong, I've spent the last 15, 20 years doing exactly that, and it was because that's the only tool that we have. But now we have this incredible thing with AI where we can not only use it to mine unstructured data, and I think just throw everything at it. Throw your calls, throw your transcripts, throw your meetings, put your notes in there. You still use frameworks. I think we're all far enough down this path to know that the power of AI comes from having access to that data, but also having context. So if you say, right, this is the sales framework that we're using, or even, this is the sales process, but then allowing it the freedom to say, right, well, who's ready to roll? Who's ready to sign up? Who's showing the best indicators? And it will look across, a million different facets of data and a million different indicators, and do it in a way that's far more effective than trying to force it into a linear path like we're currently doing.
But this also changes a little bit the idea of sales manager that we had, probably. So a little bit less on, control, but a way more of what else? What do you think are the skills or capabilities that the new sales managers must have in order to succeed in this vibe sales era?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really interesting one. I don't think we know fully yet. I think there's some wild guesses that we can make. And number one of those is definitely they need to understand AI. They need to understand how this works. You need to be very, very familiar with prompting. You need to be familiar with the fact that to get the best out of these wonderful new AI tools and models, you have to be constantly sense checking it. You have to be refining it. You have to be throwing it back into the machine. You have to be providing it with context. I worked as a fractional with a Gen AI company based here in Noosa, actually. And one of the phrases that I really liked that they use with clients is, AI does the heavy lifting. And they had this the company is called Springboards, and they work in the creative strategy space primarily. So big, creative agencies. And they've got this wonderful way in UX of building the context for the brand. And then, you click the button and it goes, generate me a strategy. And it goes, bang, pretty good. Do it again. Now do it again. Now do it again. Now do it again. Oh, that bit's good. Take that out, put that back in, refine it. What do you think? Apply your knowledge, give it some context. And that way they're really heavy on what I think is the future, which is augmented humans, AI augmented humans, absolutely smashing productivity. So to come back to your actual question while I'm waffling on here, two things. I think the organizations of the future are going to be a lot flatter. There's going to be much less management. It's going to be senior operators armed with context-heavy AI tools, absolutely smashing productivity. Now, I don't think we can all get to the NVIDIA style flat management where everybody's got 360 reports and no layers, but it's going to be a lot closer to that than what Facebook looks like now.
It sounds like a really solid answer, and thank you for that. Now, talking about static things, let's move from CRMs to playbooks, because I recently had another conversation with a GTM expert who works between Italy, US, and he had your same, let's say, point of view. Sentence in your article: static playbooks are overrated, real sales is messy, context heavy and non-linear. Vibe sales isn't about perfect execution, it's about it mostly works. Now, let's take this assumption. So if static playbooks are overrated, sales is non-linear, how should sales team deal with managers who still push, for rigid processes and people who just know how to throw a playbook at their sales force and then just look for who among them is respecting it 100%?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a challenge. And that manager, they're not going to last very long because they're going to be completely outperformed by people who are AI native. I think there will be a playbook, but it will be a new playbook. And it will be much more, I think, much more of a guideline rather than this is the way that you do it, and very kind of dictatorial. And if you think back to why management exists and working styles, it was to create efficiency. When the Industrial Revolution happened, management theory and management science came in. And look, don't tell anyone, Tabea, but I actually have an MBA, so I have looked at a couple of these things. I've been trying to live it down for a while in the tech space, but I have looked at these things. But I think the reality is, there are going to be a new AI native way of working. And that means that to get the best out of this new world, you're going to have to be experimenting. You're going to have to be moving fast. I think if you were to describe in one sentence the new reality broadly, not just in sales, about the world that we live in with AI now, it's that it moves incredibly fast. Like Cursor getting to 100 million in 10 months. That's insane. Like, can you imagine? Do they have a static playbook? There is no playbook. It doesn't exist. They got to 100 million in 10 months. No company has ever done anything like that before. There is no playbook for how you operate these days. It's just a rocket ship. So you get on and you ride it, and you have to be constantly iterating and learning and evolving. And that's just, that's the reality, I think, of the world we live in today.
So the playbooks are the reality, the things that we face every day, and that's it. I think that this also changes a little bit also the paradigm of all the sales methodologies which have been out in the last years. If you take a look at all the acronyms that were then pushed into the CRM, everyone had each one of these has a letter. Have you found the economic buyer? Have you found the paper process or whatever? I think all this will go away. I mean, we are still expected to uncover this information, but maybe in a less rigid way. So my question for you, out of the blue, what do you think will happen to all these acronym sales methodologies?
Yeah, I think the other interesting thing about this world, particularly this AI world that we're living in, is knowledge is no longer the moat. Like you can talk to a completely untrained chat GPT now and ask it, what's the best sales methodology for, what I'm selling? And it might come back and say, well, I think MedPick, and then use the SPICE framework when you're doing discovery, and then use this model for when you're doing product demos. Great, there it is. Now what do I do with it? So I think that the sum total of human knowledge is a type away, or even now a voice question away. So the question is going to become, I think, rather than this is the best framework and the best methodology for you, it's going to be what's the best way to get the sale? And it might be different. One sale might be using Spiced. Another one might be a challenger sale. Another one might be a solution sale. And I think for the first time in human history, these tools have given us the ability to make that decision on the fly. So understanding what they are is still unbelievably important, I think. And you've got a tutor there who can teach you how to do it. But I think the ability to be nimble in your approach and completely moving away from a structured way of playing to playing the ball, if you were thinking about it in rugby terms, you got to play the ball rather than sticking with a rigid game plan. And I think we're entering into a new phase. I hate to give the All Blacks credit for anything, but we're entering into a phase where you play the ball that's in front of you. And I think that just occurred to me then, actually. And again, I hate to give them credit because they're the mortal enemy on the rugby field. But, they're incredibly good at making sure that every one of their players is equipped with the skills to read the situation, to react, and to move ahead to get the best possible outcome. And I think that's actually a really good analogy for where Vibe Sales is taking us.
These changes also the idea of talent that we have. Like the idea of sales talent that we had 5 years ago doesn't match the idea of sales talent that we have now. So I mean, what kind of skills would you look for now if you had to hire a salesperson according to Vibe Sales Manifesto, the future, but also the present that we're living? What kind of skills would you look for?
Yeah, I think there are some core skills that remain unchanged. The best enterprise salespeople that I ever came across anywhere in my career were incredibly customer focused, and that's not going to change. They were incredibly good at solving the customer's problem, and that's not going to change. And they were very good at digging in to find out what the real challenge was and then what was required and then crafting a solution against that. So again, I don't think that's going to change. The bit that is going to change is they're now going to be using all of these incredible tools or building their own tools so that they can solve that customer problem and then build them a solution. It might be that we have the ability for every customer to have a custom landing page. It may be that everyone gets their own custom lead magnet. It may be definitely that every client or every customer gets their own sales process because the sales path will be different.
So shout out to the SaaS industry who hired a lot of process-driven people and now is falling short from hires hires who have curiosity and problem-solving skills. So shout out to them. Let's figure out what they come up with. But by the way, I think that let's go back to your article because one sentence is my favorite one. Okay, no more hopium. No more hopium. Hope is not a strategy. Pipeline fluff is not a forecast. If your deal energy is low, Vibe Sales will call it. The system gets smarter with every interaction without requiring human analysis. So, if Vibe Sales is all about dynamic, real time sense making, how do you really prevent the constant fluidity, from undermining an accurate forecast, which is all about structure? How do you do that?
Yeah, well, I think the basis for that forecasting is going to change. If you put a human forecaster up against an AI forecaster and it's been trained and it has the knowledge, and bang, it's the AI is going to get it, and it's going to check it every 6 seconds. It's not going to do it end of month or end of quarter or when the board papers are due. I think when I was thinking about that particular comment, it was in all the time that I've had both as a sales operator and a sales manager, if you have a system, people will game it. People will pad their pipeline. People will sandbag because that's where the incentives are. Do you know what I mean? Like, we all do it, right? We're human, and salespeople, I think, are probably more affected by incentives than any others, because 50% of your package is up for grabs, and so all of the good salespeople are constantly studying the model. How can I get more? What if I hold this one back? What if I push it? So I think it's going to be real time. Forecasts are going to be in real time now, and they're going to be far more accurate. And it's going to be based on a whole bunch of different signals that we don't currently have the capacity to include, in our rigid forecasts, in our rigid structure.
Makes sense. And so means that these forecasts will require a lot of adaptability. So how do we balance these adaptability, these agility with the kind of predictable outcome? Because it means that if we go with the flow, how do we figure out how to be consistent with the bank?
Yeah, totally. And there always has to be a balance there and a meeting of the minds. Go back to that cursor example. I'm sure they had a forecast. I don't know if it would have been accurate. I mean, if they had the balls to front up and say, yeah, we're going to hit 100 million this year, I mean, God bless them. If they did that. There's not a salesperson alive who isn't optimistic about their forecast, but that's insane. So, what do their forecasts look like? Is it, okay, we need to scrap this month and add another zero because things are going well, and not at the front, at the back. Yeah, I think that there'll always be a constant balance between, what you need to provide, whether that's for, board papers or your own business planning. What does that forecast look like? But I just think getting there will be quicker. You'll be able to look at all of your data. It will be a lot more dynamic, and you should be able to get. And we're not there yet, right? We don't have the capability to do all these wonderful things that I'm talking about because the technology isn't there yet. We're close, and I think it's definitely on the near horizon. And things like Chat GPT with their connectors. So now Chat talks directly to your CRM. It's got integrations with HubSpot. It's got integrations with Google G Suite. It's got integrations with Box. So it's got all of your files. I don't know that it's completely accurate when you start loading it up yet, but there are ways to counter that, and so it's coming. And so the ability to talk to your CRM and say, okay, well, what are my hottest deals this month? What am I going to close? Okay, that's great. Have a look at my emails and tell me who should I be following up with. That's not relying on a pre-built, templated, I need to follow up after 2 weeks. Like, if somebody's hot, it's hot, and the AI will pick up that they have responded quickly, that they're moving fast, and you should concentrate on them first because they're the ones who are going to close.
Makes sense. And last one question about the Vibe Sales Manifesto, okay? Because in the article you also talk about, tomorrow's leaders. So let's go back to tomorrow's sales manager. They have a need to design systems to think algorithmically and read patterns, okay? Not just people managers. But most managers were trained really in control, compliance, and playbook execution. So going back to the skills required from a different angle, do you believe that the new leaders can really shift their mind? Or do you think companies should look at the new generation of managers, taking into account the generational shift that these AI will provide? New people, or let's train the existing one?
Look, I think that depends on the people, and I think there are going to be both. There are going to be people, and there's, at the big end of town, change comes slowly, even with the wonderful tools that we're talking about here. Somebody just inked a $35 billion deal for Oracle. I mean, they're never working again, you know what I mean? And they're probably not going to have to worry about learning this new system. They're good. They're set. They're just going to like release a book and sail into the sunset. God bless them. They don't need to worry about it. But I think, a lot of the really future-leaning leaders are talking about AI-first companies. And I think the same sort of principles apply to AI first sales. And that is, empowering your team to really go after experimentation and understanding that initially it might be 2 steps backwards before it's 10 steps forwards. While you're figuring it out, while you're seeing what works, and it's not going to work the first time. I think anyone who spent any time playing around with these tools trying to build something in Cursor, it comes back with an error, and it gets really close, and then you go way backwards, and then sometimes you have to scrap it and start all over again. So there isn't a playbook that exists for our current reality. We're writing it as we speak, and we're asking the tool that we're using to write it as we go. So it's a pretty wild time. But I think, the fundamentals there apply in terms of consistency will beat the smartest playbook anytime, any day of the week, and I think that will still apply. So having your AI tweaked to the nth degree and with context and building something that's incredible is always going to get beaten by somebody who's armed with just a straight ChatGPT and a willingness to work 10 hours a day and bang out the calls. And I think one of the other consequences of this new AI future is the human touch and the human connection is going to be far more important than it ever has been before, because there's going to be so much AI slop out there that, the ability to cut through that and to use all of those tools to enable those conversations and make them productive and make them useful. I think that's really where the magic is going to happen. So how do we foster an environment where that happens a lot more, and to make sure that it's really authentic and not just slop?
What's curious is that these human to human topic comes in all my latest conversations. David Brock, Omar Fogliadini, everyone says, look, guys, we know stuff about AI, but the future, if you have to develop your capabilities, do AI on the side, but please go back to the social things that probably you lost because you were, I don't know, too process driven or whatever. Question for you, and I think that we're almost at the end of the episode, but I want to know a little bit something about your projects, what you're working on, the speaking sessions you do, because that is a lot on your plate. I mean, I see a lot of stuff happening on LinkedIn. I say, there you go. So how do you manage a 36 hours day?
I don't know if you've seen, there's a bit of a meme going around about the guy who has 24 hours a day. By 10 o'clock, I'm done my first day. By 5 o'clock, I'm done my next day. And that multiplies. That's not me. I'm the complete opposite. I got 2 young kids. That was them screaming in the background. That wasn't anyone being tortured. It was just bath time. But I've got the community on the side, and the whole primary purpose of the community is to try and help people move into the fractional space. I didn't know anyone who was doing it when I started, so I'm trying to give people the kind of support to do that. One of the things that I've developed there is ZachBot, which was using Delphi AI. It's a tool trained on a 10,000 word guide on how to become a fractional, and you can just ask it questions, or you can call it up and talk to it, and it will give you advice on. It doesn't quite sound like me. It sounds like me with an American accent, but that's okay. It's really good at making the content more accessible and more relevant. And then generally I try to be an advocate for the fractional model, kind of broadly. And here in Australia, we're relatively new. I think when I first started doing it, there were only about 2,000 people on LinkedIn globally who call themselves a fractional. And last time I saw it was about 180,000, and that's only a small fraction of people who are doing it. So, anything I can do to help the kind of the market and the industry move forward, I think rising tide lifts all boats there. So, trying to share what I've learned over the last couple of years, both to operators and also to startups and high growth companies, because I think it's just a no-brainer.
Last one sentence. I mean, a question. I always ask this at the end of the podcast. So, nothing new. If there would be one sentence, one advice you would like to share with, I don't know, people who probably scared of this new reality, either in sales and sales manager, or even as a fractional exec who are entering this new reality and they don't know how to handle it, what kind of advice would you give?
Yeah, I think I'll stick to the AI side on this one, and the vibe sales approach. I think the reality is you just have to allocate time in your day, in your week, to be playing with the tools. There isn't a playbook, there isn't a course. There are some courses that'll give you the fundamentals. That's great, but you just literally have to be on the tools and playing with them, because it's a whole new way of operating, and you have to allow for your team to do that, and you have to mandate that your team is doing that, and you have to, you know, put it into their calendars and expect them to be spending some time. Google's, back when they were a forward-thinking company, they're 20% projects, right? Because that's where the magic came from. So expecting people to spend 15, 20% of their week just playing around with AI to see what they can come up with. Dumping the data in there, dumping the context in there, and so providing them the sandbox to do that, or doing it yourself, because that's the only way you're going to become AI fluent and an AI native. And if you're not doing that, then you're going to get left behind so quickly, because this space is moving so fast.
So just be adaptable and be practicing. Zach,
Totally. Yeah. You asked for one sentence, man, and I gave you 5 minutes. But I'm a sales guy. You knew the risk
I mean,
coming
no,
into
no,
this.
it's actually was really good. Otherwise, I would have asked another follow-up question to go right there. So I'm fine with the answer you gave me. Anyway, Zach, thank you so much for accepting the invitation, being on the show. I really appreciated the chat, the conversation, learned a lot, and one last thing: how can people follow you? You mentioned the fractional community at the beginning. Just tell us where can they drop you like a note or whatever. Yeah.
The community is called the Fractional Exec. So the website is thefractionalexec.com.au, because we're down here in Australia. LinkedIn, Zachary King, come and find me. I'm pretty active on there. That's how this conversation ended up happening. So yeah, reach out. I am on Twitter as well. I'm not as consistent on Twitter as I would like. I think it's gone downhill recently, but hopefully it'll come back shortly. Yeah, I'm very online, so it's not too hard to track me down somewhere.
Thank you so much, Zach. And I mean, let's have another chat in the next 6 months to figure out what happened, okay?
Totally, let's do it. Let's check in 6 months and see where we're at. I love it.
Have a nice one. Bye.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on.